The warm summer breeze rustles my hair, and I take another long sip from my glass as the sun sinks below the horizon. It's a nice area around here, on this little slice of the Cape. It never used to be. It was only about 10 years ago that this whole place was a complete dump. Trash piled up high against the rocks, broken bottles and empty cans littering the beach. It was disgusting. But I guess someone finally had enough, and little by little, the natural beauty began to return to the area. These efforts accelerated in the past few years. And now, well, now it's actually somewhere to be proud of. I'm not looking at the beach tonight though, nor at the rocks, slick and shiny. I'm not even watching the setting sun or its orange golden light reflecting across the waves. I'm looking up at the sky, the clouds to be more specific. Interspersed between the lazy, rolling clouds up high, a soft gray-purple and lined with gold, are a series of curious, bewildering phenomena. I squint my eyes as I study them. My words don't do them justice. It's awe-inspiring really, like looking at the northern lights. Except the things in the clouds aren't any examples of freak weather that I'm familiar with. I heard a story once about thin pillars in the sky of Scandinavia, like glowing swords, refractions of the light of the morning sun through the ice crystals in the air. But there is no ice in the sky on this side of the Atlantic, not where I'm standing at least, and no explanation I can think of for the dazzling sights up above. I watch as enormous circles of amber light flicker in and out of view, both in front of and behind the billowed-up clouds, as they drift at a snail's pace across the sky. The great circles have rays in much the same manner as the halos produced by street lamps at night, and these rays seem to shift and change position as I move my head from side to side. What the heck am I looking up at here? I murmur to myself as I bring my drink up to my lips for another sip. A middle-aged couple walking their dog along the sand has also stopped to watch, and one of them turns to look at me. I raise my glass and call down to them. "You guys seeing this?" They call back in the affirmative and ask me if I know what it is. "Beats me," I shout back as a man cycles past on the adjacent road, the wheels of the bike sending up little bursts of dust. "But I gotta get a picture at least," I mutter more softly as I reach for my phone and point it skyward. "Huh?" I muse as I try a few different angles. Bizarrely, the effect does not seem to show up very well on the picture. I try fiddling about with the exposure, but as the sun at last disappears behind the horizon, the great and wondrous circles vanish with it. They flicker from existence, and for a second or two, it almost seems as if their residue hangs in the air, imprinted against the clouds and the sky itself. It must just be my imagination, however, as in a blink, this too is gone. I watch the sky for a minute more, curious to see if they will return. Then I finish my drink and return inside for the night, locking the door up tight behind me. I set off a half hour early to work the next morning in an attempt to beat the peak of the traffic. Much to my delight, I am wholeheartedly successful and enjoy a leisurely drive into the office. Once again, my words do the truth a disservice. The office is in fact a wondrous building. It's one of the nation's 10 primary NASA centers. And even though I'm just a lowly technician, I find myself regularly humbled to work in such a place. There are those at NASA that try to talk the organization down, but I will never be one of them. As a kid, I dreamt that one day I'd get to work with such fantastic minds and such a hub of science and math and progress, and I've ended up extremely lucky that I get to live that dream each and every day, at least a little. As I drive my route into work, I occasionally risk a glance up to the sky, half hoping that I will see those unusual shapes once again. But sadly, with every passing minute, I find it likelier and likelier that I will probably never see them again. Someone I work with will be able to tell me the truth of it. They'll be able to shed some light on what I saw. I greet my colleagues as I always do on my way inside, nodding and waving and making small talk as I head past the corridors of research labs, the halls of long white screens, the passages to rooms sealed off for the working majority, And as I approach my desk, I am interrupted by a woman a little older than myself, a good friend and a data scientist by the name of Andrea. "Good morning, Dan," she says to me, and I reply with the same energy. She asks me about my weekend and whether or not I got up to anything exciting last night. I shake my head with a soft smile and immediately pivot the conversation towards the glimmering circles. She's not an expert in weather phenomena, at least not to my knowledge, but it would be nice to share my experience with someone. Perhaps she even saw them herself? I explain them in detail, getting lost in my own description as I throw my hands out wide to convey the circle size. "And you should have seen the way they shone, Andrea," I say, "glittering like, well, I don't even know. You know I suck at describing things. But they shimmered like stars that were underwater, but up in the sky." I shake my head and laugh. I sound like I'm talking a load of crap. Honestly, if you'd seen them, you'd understand what I mean. Any idea what they could be? I look at my colleague and realize to my surprise that her face has paled. She manages a weak smile, but there's something off about her. The atmosphere shifts at once, and my sixth sense puts me on a sudden, immediate alert. "Wow," she says, but I can tell in her voice that she's hiding something. She's holding back. That sure sounds incredible. Say, whereabouts were you when you saw these lights? What time did they happen?" I pause. For some unknown reason, I consider withholding from her the truth. Why would I lie? I ask myself. This is Andrea. What's gotten into you? I hesitate, but ultimately, I decide on the truth. I can't discount the fact that maybe I'm just being stupid or paranoid, that I've misinterpreted some body language or failed to read a social cue. "Sunset, exactly," I reply, "right above the cape." She nods thoughtfully and furrows her brow. "Interesting," she says. "It's not something I've ever heard of before, but just leave it with me. I'll try and find some more information for you later today." I give her a half smile. "Honestly," I say, "it's alright. I was just making conversation really. It's no big deal. I can probably find the answer on Google or something." Andrea adjusts her glasses and nods at me. And then, without another word, she scurries away, heading towards one of the corridors that lead deep into the heart of the building. Now, I don't know exactly what it is that strikes me on this particular morning, but as impulse hits with a blast of intense curiosity, I decide to do something that I've never done before. I turn away from my desk, and I decide to follow. I follow her towards those secretive halls, my pace quick, my heart pounding, and my head low, not wanting to draw to myself any unwanted attention. It's still early in the morning. My shift hasn't technically started, and the number of people around me is as minimal as it's going to get. And something's not right. I can feel it. Andrea's never acted that way before. Never. And sometimes in life, you just have to take a leap, even if it seems foolish to do so, even if you're riddled with self-doubt. It's probably nothing, I tell myself. Andrea's got a lot on her plate. She's stressed and just wants to get back to her work. But that's not true. I respond to my own hypothesis. You know Andrea. You saw how she changed when you mentioned the circles in the sky. She's hiding something, and you know it. So, I follow on behind, careful to keep a respectable distance to maintain a suspension of disbelief in the event that I am caught. But she does not turn around. She snakes left and right through the meandering corridors until she vanishes with a quick beep of her cart through a doorway I have never even seen, let alone been through. I increase my pace, careful to keep my footsteps as quiet as I can on the cold white floor. And just as the door is about to click closed, locking itself into a barrier between worlds, I unceremoniously jam the tip of my shoe in the way, and the passage remains open. I stumble to a stop and catch my breath, listening intently to see if I have been caught. I twist my body and turn to look behind me, but the corridor is empty and stretches away into clinical blank space in both directions. Gathering my courage, I creep closer to the door, careful not to let my foot slide out from between the door and the frame. "What are you doing?" I whisper to myself. You're going to get yourself in trouble here. Yet, despite this reasonable logic, I do nothing to keep myself sneaking closer. Until I am right beside the crack in the door, my ear literally pressed to the wall. Andrea's voice, high-pitched and panicked, drifts through into the corridor. At exactly sunset, she splutters to an unseen audience. Right overhead in the sky. You sure about this? Comes the deep voice of a man in response. He told me himself just now, Andrea replies. I don't know why he'd lie about such a thing. He seemed genuinely curious. There is a smattering of whispers from within the room. I strain my ears as much as I can. So their presence was not revealed to him? Asks another male voice with a slightly different accent. I don't believe so. No, says Andrea. Another woman joins the conversation. Her voice is distinct and gravely. How curious. Tell me, was there anyone else on the beach at the time? I don't know. So the temporary reprieve we have enjoyed from the Zuna Zemel appears to be at an end. Why haven't we received word from the moon base? We must keep faith, urges the deep-voiced man. It is for our own good that we have not heard from the moon, and that we do not know the full extent of any plan. What the hell are they talking about? I think to myself, desperate with curiosity. Moon base? Zuna Zemel? What's going on? I adjust my position, and in doing so, my foot twitches, causing the slightest of shifts in the position of the door. I cringe, pulse racing, and the room goes silent. Shit. Is someone there? Calls the gravely voiced woman. Shit. I hesitate, unsure what to do. I seem to have stumbled across something way above my pay grade. I don't know what I'm doing, so I retract my foot and make to leave, putting the pressure on my heels and preparing to turn and hasten away. But before I can do so, the door flies wide open, and a man with broad shoulders and a dark grey suit appears before me, staring down into my face with alarm. Apologies, I begin, awkwardly, but the man interrupts. Shh, he says. Quickly, in here. And before I can protest, he has grabbed me by the jacket and drawn me into the mysterious room. I find myself staring at Andrea in a panel of about 7 or 8 unusual individuals, all sat around a long rectangular table. The door closes shut behind me with a click and a soft metallic crunch. Hi? I say, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Apologies. I was just curious about what was going on in here. Didn't mean to disturb you. I'll just go right back to my desk. How much did he hear? The man with the deep voice asks the man in the grey suit. How much did you hear? He repeats, redirecting the question to me. I look between them with a raised eyebrow. Well, nothing really. Look, I can just go, so... Dan, says Andrea, taking a step towards me. This is really important. Did you hear anything critical while you were listening? I rub my chin. Sorry, I didn't mean to. The woman with the gravely voice waves a hand at me. She is small in stature, with deep lines at the sides of her eyes. Save your apologies. There's no use for them now. Just be honest. This is important. You are the man of which Andrea speaks, correct? You saw the circles in the sky? I nod, tentatively. And what did you hear? Give us some keywords, if anything. I chew my tongue, looking between the people around the table. Every pair of eyes is fixed upon me. Moonbase, I say out loud, repeating the words that stuck out to me, the words that make no sense. Zuna Zemel? Andrea closes her eyes and brings her hand up to rub her forehead. A ripple of murmurs shiver around the room, and the gravely voiced woman tightens her lips. It's too late then, she mutters. Does he know? Has he seen them? Andrea reopens her eyes. She looks at me, furrows her brow. Know what? I ask, and my embarrassment at having been caught is quickly overtaken by frustration. Look, just what the hell is going on here? I'm going to leave now, alright? Unless someone wants to clue me in? The man with the deep voice rises from his chair. "It's Dan, right?" he asks me, and I nod. The woman with the gravely voice grabs his arm. "Wait, Ronstone, I might be wrong. He doesn't seem to have grasped it just yet. He might still be saved." "Now hold on," says someone else from around the table, a man in a green sweater. "We have to consider what this means. Dan's mind clearly remains closed to the Zuna Zemo for now. If we pursue any further questioning, we risk his enlightenment, his awakening." "Would that be advantageous or not?" asks another. "What are the orders of the moon base?" Wait now just a second," Andrea interrupts, and the others turn to her. She sounds, all of a sudden, much more like the Andrea I know. "We have to consider what Dan might want. This is his life. This is bigger than him," says the woman with the gravely voice. "Clara?" Andrea says to her. "Please." But she is cut off by the man with the deep voice. The man so named as Ronstone. "This is bigger than all of us. And besides, we cannot possibly give him an informed choice. By simply explaining the choice available, it will be made for him." "Look," I interject. "I'm getting pretty sick of being spoken about as if I'm not here. What exactly is this choice you're talking about?" I throw out my arms. "I just wanted to know about some circles in the sky." I sigh. I have no recollection of ever seeing these people before. They aren't my superiors, and I don't know what nonsense they're spouting. "You know what? Forget it. I'm just going to return to my desk." "Dan?" Andrea calls out after me as I turn to leave, and I pause and look back at her. "How?" she falters. "How badly do you want to know the truth about the lights in the sky?" A chill passes through me. I am of two minds. One half of me does not particularly care about the science behind the lights. The answer surely is some simple, scientific explanation. Fascinating for sure, but not hugely magical in the traditional sense. This half of me is screaming at me, urging me desperately to just turn around and to leave. To forget about this room, these people, and this bizarre little encounter on a Monday morning. But the other half whispers that there is more at play, that the truth behind the circles is surely more fantastical than I could ever have imagined. After all, what else could warrant some secrecy, such cryptic ramblings? This is the half of me that hungers for knowledge, the half that is obsessed with the intricacies of the universe. It is, after all, the part of my soul that led me here, to NASA in the first place. I plant my feet on the ground and turn back to the panel of strangers. "Tell me the truth," I mutter. "I need to know." "The answer will change your life," Ronstone says in a low voice. "If we tell you, things will never be the same for you. And if I leave without hearing it," I reply, "I'll always wonder. I wasn't made to withstand that kind of torture." Ronstone sighs. Andrea takes another step towards me and adjusts her glasses, sliding them a little higher up her nose. "Dan," she says. "In 1972, during Apollo 17, the last manned mission to the moon, the final astronaut to step foot on the lunar surface, Eugene Cernan, discovered the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life." I remain calm. I trust Andrea. I always have. But I do not believe her for a second. How could I? She isn't making sense. "The Zuna Zemo," she says, her voice wavering. "The name given by the aliens themselves." I laugh and shake my head. "Aliens? No, come on. What's really going on here? What does this have to do with lights in the sky?" Cernan witnessed the circles in the lunar sky as he walked the surface of the moon, says Clara, the gravel-voiced woman. Unfiltered by the atmosphere of the earth, they appeared in their true form, enormous, glowing rings that shone like fire, swirling around and around as they wove in and between one another, backdropped by 100 million stars. "The rings are the projections of the Zuna Zemo," continues Ronstone. "They may have been watching us for many hundreds of years. And soon, young man, they will attack." At this word, attack, I stumble where I stand and stagger to the nearby table, reaching out to grip it to maintain my balance. My eyes go wide, but I am not looking at anything in front of me. My mind is rushed with a sudden, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a pain as such. It feels more like water flooding into every crevice of my brain at once. I see myself from a third perspective as a blade of glittering golden grass amongst billions of others, lost in a field washed in the light of a setting sun. I am insignificant, meaningless, and yet, as the light catches across the glowing blades, I shine as bright as the rest of them. I become aware in a terrifying instant of the alien presence above Earth. I see it. I see it in my mind's eye. I see the rings in their true form. I accept in an instant the truth of what everyone has been saying. They're real. It's all real. Ah! I shout, my hands pressed to the sides of my head. What's happening to me? The Zunazamo possess the ability to read the thoughts of those who perceive them, says Ronstone, his voice booming into my head. We do not know how, only that they can. From this moment on, consider your mind an open screen. The aliens see everything that you think, and there is nowhere to hide. Andrea rushes forwards and grips my hand. Dan, she says urgently, right now, your mind is the clearest it's ever going to be. The Zunazamo read thoughts, but in the instant of awakening, a little is given back in return. A little of the mind of the alien trickles into your own thoughts. Try to imagine the circles in the sky again. What do you see? What do they mean? I swear and sweat as I grapple with my consciousness. I become aware of every atom of my being, and my thoughts begin to bleed into the thoughts of those around me. It's like I can almost see it. It has an almost perceivable color. I grit my teeth. I try to concentrate. I feel them in my head. These aliens, they're watching me. They're real, and they are seeing the world around me through my thoughts. They see my thoughts, and I cannot lie. I am read like a book. Ah! I shout. Get out! Get out of my head! The feeling will pass, Clara declares in a voice beyond the means of her wiry stature. You won't get another opportunity like this. Now focus. What do you see? What do you hear? It comes only in flashes, but as I grimace and tremble, I see the circles, those huge, fiery rings, as a language, or a code. I see them as dates. And whilst I could not say for certain which shape and which tiny disturbance across the circle's surface translates as what number exactly, I see with effort that the date is changed. It shifts from the date it was before to something new. It is closer, sooner, and I feel a surge of something else, an emotion close to anger. I cry out in alarm, staggering backwards down onto the floor, crashing into a chair as I collapse, my vision red. And then, a little slower than it came upon me, the feeling begins to fade. I catch my breath, panting as I return to the room. I am re-anchored in my own body, and my sense of self starts to return to me, slowly but surely. Despite this, however, I am not the same as I was 5 minutes ago. I am changed. The dread lingers, and no matter what I do, I cannot shake the feeling that the back of my head is a little heavier, that someone, somewhere far away, is reading and studying every hint of a thought that shivers across my brain. Fuck, I mutter, my face pale. That was intense. That was awful. Andrea crouches beside me. I have never seen her look so guilty. I'm sorry, Dan, she whispers. This is the fate of those that learn the truth of the aliens. Paradoxically, they lose some of their ability to fight back. We are all open books. They are reading all our thoughts, likely at this very second. I must say, however, says Clara beside us, and everyone in the room turns to look at her. An aura of unease hangs over the panel. I have never seen a reaction quite as passionate as yours, young man. Tell us, what did you see? I pause. Already, the images are slipping away like fragments of a dream. I saw the rings again, I reply. The ones in the sky above the beach. It was like It was like they were showing me dates. Like a calendar almost. I falter, aware of how crazy I sound. But Ronstone urges me on. He leans forwards and grips the table. Yes? Go on. A date has been changed. I say to the room. Something, some plan perhaps, is closer now than it was before. And I felt. I struggle for words. I felt an emotion. It was anger, I think, or something like it. When did you feel the emotion? Clara asks. And think carefully now. This is important. When exactly did you feel the anger? Right at the end, I say, turning to look at her directly. I wipe a sheen of sweat from my forehead. Right before I snapped out of it. There is a moment of quiet deliberation as Andrea helps me to my feet. Aliens, I think to myself, right above the earth. Oh my god, the implications. There are other sentient species in the universe. What is their planet like? What are they like? What do they want? Are they like humans? Or something we cannot even comprehend? After some soft murmuring amongst the group, Clara turns to me. I think perhaps you were supposed to find us here today, Daniel. What makes you say that? I ask, overwhelmed. And, for the first real time today, afraid. I think it likely that the Zuna Zemo did not want this information shared. She continues. I think their anger was a genuine, momentary reaction. Intel gathered through our own efforts and reported from the moon base have led us to the valuable knowledge that the aliens plan to haul one of their fallen ships from the sea. Oranstone says, we know they have to do this, and we know the location of the ship, and now we know that they have brought their plan to retrieve it forwards. My head is heavy with confusion. But wait, I reply. None of this makes any sense. Why wouldn't the aliens just change their plan again now that they know that we know all about it? They can't, Andrea says softly. Any changes to their plans have to be made decades in advance. Why? I ask. Why is that? And what the hell is their plan? Their grand plan, I mean. Clara sighs and looks around the room. Alright everyone, I think it best I speak with our latest addition here in a more private setting. Please continue the meeting in my absence and make use of this new intel as best you can. She turns to me. Daniel, come join me in the next room. Andrea, I think it best if you come along too. I gave her a cautious nod and cast one more look around the panel of individuals before following her through a doorway into an adjacent room. The door clicked close behind us, and the three of us take our seats around a small circular table. Dan, what I'm about to tell you will sound ludicrous. Clara begins, her eyes narrowing and the lines beside them deepening as she leans closer. And if you had not already accepted the truth of the aliens through your awakening, then I have no doubts that you wouldn't believe a word I'm about to say. I exchange a look with Andrea and wait for her to continue. She takes a breath. About 250 years ago, the Zuna Zemo found Earth and made their first contact. She hesitates to see whether I will accept this information. When I fail to interrupt, she nods and continues. Records speak of great circles in the sky, a low humming and a change in the tides, and bouts of sudden, spontaneous madness amongst the populace present at the time. She chews her tongue. I doubt, to be quite frank, that they suffered any worse than yourself. But if this truly was the first instance of alien contact, then I cannot say for sure. Clara looks to Andrea, and then back to me. We do not know what the Zuna Zemo want with the Earth. They possess far superior technology that we can barely understand. But what we do know is that even these aliens have limits. Our current intel shows us that they are building some kind of complex device above the Earth's atmosphere. A weapon, perhaps. This is the most likely probability, but we do not know for certain. We have to assume the worst, however. The survival of the planet may depend upon it. The survival of the planet. The gravity of the situation begins to really hit home for the first time. I am struck with a ridiculous whiplash. This morning, I was excited to discuss an interesting weather phenomena, I was actually enjoying my commute into work. And now I'm sitting in some mysterious room, discussing a potential alien attack and the end of all life on Earth. Sweat trickles down my back, and I tug on my shirt with discomfort. So, these limits, Clara continues. The aliens do not appear to possess the ability to transport large amounts of matter over a short space of time. We have concluded this, as otherwise the weapon would be complete, and it would already be too late for us to do anything about it. I swallow nervously. I try to picture what it might look like. Some massive, monstrous contraption held in space, and piece by piece, edging towards completion. The aliens also underestimated the human capability for progress, she says. When they beheld us for the first time, we had barely begun to harness electricity. As a species, we had not even invented the train. And now we have an international space station, a presence on the moon, and this, Daniel, is our saving grace. What do you mean? I ask. You mentioned the moon base earlier. I didn't even know we had a permanent presence on the moon. The aliens possess the technology to read the minds of the people who know of their existence, Clara says. Through trial and error, we have determined, or at least decided, that this is an involuntary process, which is to say, the Zuna Zemel cannot control or choose whose minds to read. It simply happens. Right, I say hesitantly. But how does that, and as I said before, Clara continues, the aliens underestimated our penchant for development and progress. A thin membrane of an unknown material was wrapped around the Earth not long after first contact. A material we have named the mirror. Now, the mirror prevents us from seeing what they do not wish us to see. It is the reason that no one on the Earth's surface can see the monstrosity they are constructing in our own backyard. But we can, right? I ask, referring to NASA. Oh, of course. We can, because we have the ability to send all sorts of wondrous things into space. She juts forwards, and I retreat in alarm. And that is the key, Daniel. The mirror is placed only around the Earth. The aliens could never have anticipated we would already possess the ability to leave our planet, albeit with some admitted difficulty. My heart races. Clara sinks back into her seat with a sigh. The mirror is tied to the ability to read our minds. It cannot prevent us from sending spacecraft right through it, nor does it have any effect on anyone stationed outside our atmosphere, be they on the ISS or the moon. She folds her arms. The moon is where our hopes now lie. All plans relating to the defense of humanity can and must take place on the base we have constructed there. They are the ones who give us our orders. I am of half a mind that they are the ones who forced the aliens' hand, that they were hoping a NASA employee would be present on the beach last night, given its proximity to our headquarters here, and that this employee would be able to give us this new piece of valuable intel. The Zuna Zemel are angry, Andrea says, giving voice to her thoughts. They didn't want us to learn of their plan. Clara nods. They're bringing forwards their attempt to raise the downed ship, and that means we have to bring our own plan forwards too. I open my mouth to speak, but no words come out. Too much information has passed through my head in the last hour, and it's all excruciatingly difficult to process. But I manage. What does it matter? If we have a response plan, the Zuna Zemel will just read our minds. As I said, Clara says patiently, but I catch a flash of irritation. The plans created by the aliens are made years in advance, and once set in motion, they cannot be stopped. And of course, crucially, we down here on Earth do not know the specifics of the full plan. Hell, we barely know the plan at all. All we know are the orders are sent our way from the moon base, and we execute them. The moon base wanted us to have this new information. They withhold more for a reason. Thus, we must act as best we can with what we have. You follow orders for a mystery plan? I ask, bewildered. You do what they tell you without even know why you're doing it? Yes, Clara replies plainly. It is the only strategy we have. I rub a hand across my face. Jesus. Clara stands up from the table. The only source of light in the room comes from behind her, and her features are cast in shadow, her outline tinged with a similar glow to the light from the circles in the sky. Horror passes through me as I consider the threat we are all facing. The threat that most of humanity is blissfully ignorant of. The only thing keeping me grounded is the resolution and determination of the people surrounding me. I don't know if I should be thanking them or cursing them. I was happy this morning. Ignorant and happy. "Come along then," she says. "There is work to do." I don't know what kind of rank Clara or Runstone, or any of the others for that matter, might possess, but it clearly supersedes the authority of anyone in my formal chain of command. I am diverted from my primary duties, and my days are instead spent planning with the others. My world changes more or less overnight, and the nights themselves are spent restlessly. I find myself struggling to sleep, staring up at the ceiling in the filtered, dark blue light of my bedroom, unable to push aside the feeling that I'm not alone, that every fleeting thought that lights my mind is being analyzed, checked for details, reported, or broadcast. When the sleep finally comes, my dreams are dark and disturbing, twisted nightmares of a great and terrible machine in the sky, held in place above the turning of the earth beneath. An amalgamation of impossible tech, pains within pains, and reflective, deceptively thin material that falls in on itself again and again and again. And in the center, a watching eye, wide and staring, flickering through every color on the spectrum, through colors we cannot perceive, staring with a burning hatred at the parasites scrambling and crawling across the planet's surface. Blades of grass. The scythe is sharpened, piece by piece. Every morning I awake in a cold sweat, and every day is spent in the briefing room or other similar briefing rooms on calls with officials from around the world. But none of them know the true plan. Our orders come from the moon. The moon, for fuck's sake. It's ludicrous, and yet, we obey them, we follow them. I am but a small cog in this new system. I barely know what's going on most of the time. I think my primary purpose was to inform them all of the change in the plans of Zunazemo. And now, they simply don't know what to do with me. They can't just send me back to my desk. And there is, I believe, a hope that I will prove to be useful again in the future. Useful in what manner, however, remains to be seen. And so, following a ride in a helicopter and a long bumpy ride in the backseat of a truck, I find myself standing on a dock adorned in American flags, surrounded by bustling soldiers and preparing to board a vessel that is, I believe, owned by NASA. I didn't even know NASA had ships. I mutter to Andrea as our boots clank loudly along the walkway. She half turns to me and raises an eyebrow. "How do you not know that?" she asks. "You work for NASA." "Yeah, but still," I reply with a grimace. "I don't deal with this kind of stuff. What's it even for?" "It's a repurposed old recovery ship," she says as we duck through the door and into the cabin's metal interior. "It was used for collecting important pieces of fallen material from space flights." "Huh," I mutter as we head back out onto the deck. It's a long, large ship, big enough to land a plane on. I raise a hand to shield my eyes from the glare of the sun, and I admire the satellite dishes that now cover the ship's surface. And what's it for now? Andrea follows my gaze. The sun is slowly lost behind a great, dark cloud. And there it stays, as the sky is gradually overcome with billowing columns of white and grey. "Communications," she says simply, as the horn sounds from somewhere on shore. A short while later, and the ship sets sail, cutting a path through the waves and heading dutifully out to sea. Despite the presence of soldiers on the dock, this is not a military vessel. It sails under NASA's flag and is operated by a civilian crew. We are, however, escorted by a number of military ships at varying distances. It isn't until I am in the briefing room with the others that I am made aware of our next immediate steps. Runstone and Clara are with us, but the operation is led by a man with an arc of grey hair beneath a bald, domed head. His name is Kazar, and stands with a stoop as he lays out a map on the table before us. 250 years ago, when the Zunazemo last visited this planet, they lost to the waters an important piece of machinery, something we now know to be a segment of spacecraft. His eyes scan the room. For reasons unknown, the Zunazamo plan to raise this craft from the sea. But despite our lack of understanding, given everything we do know about the enemy, it is imperative we stop them. Thankfully, we know exactly where the sunken spacecraft is. Now, intel gathered over the past decades have revealed to us the Zunazamo's preferred tidal and temperature conditions for grand-scale involvement in affairs on Earth. And thanks to the information received from Daniel here, I stir at the mention of my name. Several pairs of eyes flicker my way. Khazar continues. We know that the enemy has brought forward their plans, and despite the short notice, we now know that that day must be today. He scratches his chin. The aliens, of course, have the ability to determine these natural factors and conditions several years in advance. We do not, however, which is why those of you who were able to make it were rushed here today so hastily. Thank you for your cooperation. There are some nods and murmurs from around the room. As already discussed with some of you, he nods to Clara, standing to my left, and Runstone, standing to my right, who know the specifics of what we're about to do. A small cruise ship by the name of the Karmic Wave is going to pass incredibly close to the coordinates of the sunken spacecraft. Our orders today are to divert the cruise ship so that it passes directly over the wreckage. How many people on board? Someone asks. What size of a ship are we talking here? 200 employees, Khazar replies levelly. 550 guests. Not as large as I had feared, Clara says quietly. The room is otherwise silent. I glance at Andrea, hoping for some answers, but she does not meet my eye. Thank you to the acquisition team, Khazar continues as the clouds pass by beyond the windows, who successfully ensured that Dr. Regler, the nuclear physicist who would be on board the Karmic Wave this evening. There are some mutters and murmurs from around the room. The people who I think are the acquisition team remain curiously silent, their heads bowed. Who is Dr. Regler? I whisper to Andrea. Why is it important he is on board? We're all just following the orders we're given, Dan. Andrea whispers back, trusting and hoping for the best. I grimace. It's a dangerous way of operating, one that I don't particularly like. Is this really all we can do? I wonder, as the ship stirs subtly in the waves. There has to be a better way. There has to be. And that little weight in the back of my mind, it reminds me that even if I were to think of a better way, the Zunazemo would instantly know about it. It might take them a decade to act on it, in real time, but they'd know alright. Maybe that's the strategy? I think to myself. Maybe we just have to move quickly, implement new measures at a constant rate before the aliens can catch up. I tune back into the conversation around me and realize that Khazar is wrapping up. Right, he says, clapping his hands. Everyone to your stations, please. If we can get the Karmic Wave's real-time location sent to the tracking team, that would be fantastic. The cabin ripples with a sudden bustling as everyone starts to move towards their designated locations. I am assigned a rather dull post on the deck, and I release a sigh as I press my hand to the cold, salt-dappled rail, squinting as the wind hits my eyes while I stare out to sea. Beyond the rail is the endless grey ocean, rolling waves, a grey sky, and grey steep ships, the military escort off in the distance. I don't get this plan at all, I mutter to the guide beside me. So, Khazar says we need a particular ship with a particular nuclear physicist on board to sail across a specific set of coordinates? I shake my head. It's just crazy. It's all crazy when you stop to think about it, the man beside me replies, taking a drag on his cigarette. But we gotta do what we gotta do. I turn to him. You feel it too, right? I say in a low voice. That weight in the back of your head? That maddening feeling of being watched? Of being studied? Always? The wind ripples the collar of my jacket, and I shiver from the chill. When does it go away? I ask, fearful of how he might respond. But the man does not answer. He regards me with his dark circled eyes, then turns to look out to sea, raising a cigarette for another drag. "Hey," he says after a moment. "What do you think? Is that it?" "Is what it?" I respond, following his gaze. "The ship," he says. "The karmic wave." He points across the waves. "Is that it?" I grip the rail a little tighter and lean out, peering into the distance. And sure enough, further out towards the horizon, I see a dash of white flecked with artificial blue. A cruise ship. The cruise ship, most likely. For reasons unknown, I feel a stab of anxiety. My palms become sweaty, and I feel incredibly small all of a sudden. The blade of grass feeling returns to me. "Tell me, if you can, what's going to happen to the ship?" I ask, my words heavy. As before, the man does not give a direct answer. "Who could say?" he replies in a voice rich with eerie calm. Though, I have my theories. The minutes pass by, and the tension is gradually pulled to a breaking point. I pace up and down the dock, staring at the cruise ship out at sea. "Why isn't anything happening?" I ask. "Shouldn't something have happened by now?" I make a noise of frustration. "And why the hell are we stationed here anyway? What use are we on the deck of the damn ship?" "We follow the orders," the man begins, but I cut him off. Yes, we follow the orders we're given. Shit. I rub my hands across my face. My heart is hammering, and I don't even know why. I can't take this, I think to myself as I crane my neck and look up to the cabin above me, at the tinted windows and the blurred sight of Runstone beyond the glass, holding a receiver to his mouth. What the hell is he doing? What's happening? I can't take this. I can't take it. In an instant, I abandon my post. I race across the slick, salt-stained surface of the deck towards the door in the cabin, the one that will lead me up to Runstone's location. "Hey!" my colleague calls out after me. "Hey, wait! Come back!" But I do not. I barge through the door and ascend the stairs as fast as I can, bursting into the control room with Runstone and Andrea. Andrea looks shocked to see me. Dan? She says in alarm. "What are you?" But I'm not listening to her. My focus is on Runstone, frozen in place. His eyes are bloodshot and they dart to mine. His face is pale and his hands shake. "I can't do it," he whispers, the intensity of his words sending my adrenaline spiking. "I can't give the order." I grab him by the shoulders. All I can see is the subject of my dreams, my nightmares, the colossal monstrosity in construction above the atmosphere. I can feel the pounding in my head. They're watching. They can sense my desperation. And they like it. "What do you mean?" I ask him. "What can't you do? What order?" Andrea reaches for my jacket and tries to pull me away, but I shrug her off. "The karmic wave," Runstone whispers, staring into my eyes. "They'll accept the order. They think it's an emergency, but I can't do it. I can't give them their new path." My eyes dart down to the coordinates written on the graph paper beside us. "Is this the location?" I ask, scanning the maps. Runstone nods. "Are they listening?" I ask. He nods again. In a moment of madness, I grab from him the receiver. "It has to be done. We follow the orders, right? This has to be the right course of action. We have nothing else. Not yet." I speak loudly and clearly into the receiver. "Karmic wave, divert your course at once," I say, and my blood runs cold. "Change course to the following path." And I then proceed to read out the instructions. Runstone collapses to the ground with his hands on his head. Andrea is rooted to the spot. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know what to say. She can only watch alongside me as the karmic wave follows the order that I gave it. I don't know why it obeyed so easily. Runstone said that he had created a false emergency. Perhaps the military had a hand in it. But regardless, the karmic wave obeys its orders and diverts its course. I guess we're going to find out what will happen to it, I murmur. We know what's going to happen to it, Ronstone bellows, and the man begins to sob into his hands. His demeanor has entirely changed. This isn't the Ronstone I know. This might as well be a different man. It'll be destroyed. Every last person on that ship is about to be killed. I stare at him, and in the next few seconds, the gray of the sky beyond the glass is lost to a sudden blinding light. I shield my eyes and gaze open-mouthed at a burning sky, a light with those rings within rings, the huge, sprawling amber circles fading in and out of view across the heavens. They are brighter now than they were at that sunset on the beach. Brighter and more fierce. It is almost as if the karmic wave's position on the sea has triggered some mechanism up above, and a spiraling arc is thrown down like a lightning bolt, evaporating the ship in a matter of seconds. And I do mean evaporated. I've never been one for descriptors, but I'll try my best for you. Now, the ship seems to simply melt into the air. There is no fiery explosion, no flying chunks of metal. The steel just dissolves like smoke, billowing out into all directions. A shockwave ripples across the surface of the sea, and it strikes the boat with a boom that rumbles like thunder through the air as our vessel is violently rocked from side to side. Alarms blare from all quarters, but I pay them no mind. I simply grab the console for support and stare at the sight out at sea, at the vanishing ship, the arc of light, and the gradually fading circles. One by one, they disappear, until there is no evidence remaining that they were ever there at all. Circles and ship completely gone, there 1 second and gone by the next. Blood rushes into my ears, and I look down at my hands. They appear to be shaking. One month later, and things are back to a relative normal. I say relative because I have returned to my desk. The bulk of my day is spent doing the job I was actually hired for. But there are whispers in the shadows. The alien threat has not vanished, and work behind the scenes continues. There are rumors circulating that I will be drawn back into the fray in the near future. But I am yet to be formally invited into any inner circle. And that feeling in the back of my head, it persists as a weight, a presence. I am not sure if I will ever be rid of it. The Zunazemo continue to watch. They continue to read my every thought. I am never alone these days. I find myself one evening on my back porch, watching the sunset behind the horizon as its golden rays are washed across the beach. Clara is with me. She too watches the sunset and sips on a cup of tea in contemplative silence. We never really spoke, I say, breaking the quiet, about the last mission. No, she agrees, placing her cup onto the coaster with a soft clink. We didn't. I turn to her. What do you make of it? What do you make of what I did? What you did? She repeats with an expressionless face. I think you did what was necessary. Is that so? I reply, looking down onto the sands and the sea below. Andrea has been different with me lately. She still tries to be friendly, but she's not the same. You succeeded where she failed, Clara says levelly. It's that simple. I just don't understand, I tell her sadly, shaking my head. You say that what I did was necessary, but was it? We're all working blindfolded here. How can we trust the validity of our orders? I turn to her. What do you really make of the mission? Was it justified? She regards me and then taps her fingers against the table. I suppose I could share my thoughts with you, she says. The Zunazemo can read them regardless, so it makes no difference if I speak them out loud. She shifts a little in her seat. Dr. Regler, as I'm sure you've surmised yourself by now, was no random nuclear scientist. He was awakened, just as you and I are. I lean forwards in my seat, and Clara continues. We try to minimize the number of people who are connected to the alien force. But Dr. Regler was awakened on specific orders from the moon base. We don't know why, of course. We never know why. But my personal theory is that it was done to frighten the Zunazemo, to remind them of the speed of our technological progress, the power potential of nuclear energy and weaponry, and to send them into a panic. When did this happen? I ask. When was the doctor made aware of the aliens? About 10 years ago, she says, taking a sip from her glass. I believe this was the catalyst that moved forward the alien plan, the plan to raise their damaged craft from out of the ocean. Now, a tremendous amount of energy was wasted in their failed attempt. It will take them time to recuperate, to repair, to refill, and this is time we can use to develop as a society, as a species. The attempt failed because of the karmic wave? I mutter. But why that ship? Why not any other? It had to be of the right size and shape, of course. A rough match for the mass of the sunken spacecraft. And Dr. Regler? At this, Clara hesitates. She looks out to sea, and I catch a glimmer of sadness in her eyes. Dr. Regler had no idea of these plans, obviously. He always was a stickler for his research. He devoted his life to it. Asking him to stop his research would be like asking him to stop breathing air. If allowed to live, he would have continued delving into the deep secrets of the atom, and everything he learned would have been sent straight to the Zunazemo. All the technological progress he might have made, our secret advantage against the aliens, it would have fallen right into their hands, allowing them to prepare for it. She looks back to me, her expression now cold. And the Zunazemo would have known he was on board when they inadvertently destroyed it. This is an important fact to consider then. They know that he was sent to his death. They know the weight of the decision you made, and they know what we are capable of. The evening is windless, but a chill passes through my body as the sun vanishes behind the sea. The fight continues, she says solemnly. The aliens will return with renewed force, and they will only get stronger as their machine grows in size. The question is, can we outpace them? I do not know. I remain silent as I watch the waves in the distance lap against the sand. And a thought occurs to me. What would happen, I wonder, to myself and to the aliens that are listening, if I grow to learn too much? Will I become an indispensable part of the team, like Clara? Or will I be unceremoniously executed, like Dr. Regler? The thought has no answer, and the ripple of fear that shivers down my spine, I cannot be sure of its source. I do not know if the feeling is mine or the aliens.